Scarlet by Marissa Meyer, the second book in the Lunar Chronicles series. This book's been a long time coming. I read Cinder quite a while ago now. Not that long ago, but considering I own 3 of the books, I could have really marathoned the series so far, but I didn't. I guess I get quite bored of certain genres quite quickly, and so I have to sort of go from genre to genre. But I finally got around to picking up the second book in the series. I am going to say this is probably going to have spoilers for Cinder in it. If you haven't read the first book in the Lunar Chronicles and are planning to, I would advise not watching this now unless you don't care about possible spoilers, in which case you can continue if you would like. But yes, Scarlet. I preferred this book a lot more to Cinder. I think the series is definitely picking up, and I think the main thing I would attribute to this is the fact that we now have 2 kind of separate stories running parallel to each other. Therefore, I felt like the 2 separate stories gave the book a lot more pace, and it made it a lot more interesting flitting between the 2, especially as it gave both stories a few more cliffhangers, because one story would be left for a considerable number of chapters before it was picked up again. And because basically Scarlet and Cinder's storyline seem quite unconnected the whole way through the book, so therefore you feel like you're almost reading 2 separate stories within the same world, which I found rather interesting. I quite enjoyed that. To give a quick plot synopsis without giving too many spoilers, so we pick up with Cinder from where we left off. Therefore, she's trying to escape prison at the moment, and her captors in general, while just dealing with the fact that she is a Luna, and not just any Luna, but the Princess Celine, who is being hunted and the Queen tried to kill her when she was like 3. So she's not having a good time of it, but she was rescued, brought to Earth, built back as a cyborg, and now she's sort of dealing with the fact that she's both Luna and cyborg and a fugitive. Not everybody's fully aware of her identity, but everyone's quite wary of her, and she's deemed as quite dangerous after her stunt at the ball in the last book. So Cinder's quite an interesting character, and she meets in this character called Thorn quite early on to the book, and he kind of helps her escape from jail. He's also kind of another criminal, but you forget about that pretty early on and about the activities he's done, because he's such a likeable character, I found. He's sort of that level of cocky in a character that makes them likeable and enjoyable to read about without them going too far that they become quite a hated character. So he's enjoyable, and I love his and Cinder's reactions to each other because they are almost polar opposites, so it's quite enjoyable to read. And as ever, I found Cinder and her storyline is just as good of a protagonist. She seems more well-rounded in this book and more developed, and I like her consistency as she develops. Everything she does seems quite logical for her character. I've read quite a few books where the protagonist kind of changes their personality almost to fit in with the plot, and I liked the fact that the plot was sort of revolving around her as it should be, basically. And then you have Scarlet's storyline. So Scarlet, if anyone couldn't guess, is sort of a retelling of Red Riding Hood, but in the same lunar world, and the Maya fits in really nicely. She slips Red Riding Hood's story in really sort of seamlessly, and it's really consistent throughout. I love that they were now in Europe as well, because I understood more of the references about France and Europe and things like that, so that was quite interesting to read about, because it was also quite interesting to read about a different side of the world in the same dystopian universe being presented. I don't know, I'm saying dystopian because it feels like a sort of future outlook, a possible future outlook on what the world's going to end up like, but I don't know if you would exactly call it a dystopian. But I'm going to go, it feels like that's the genre it fits into the most, so that's what I'm going with. But if someone thinks I'm wrong and wants to correct me, feel free. Yes, but I like the fact that you're getting different glimpses of parts of the world, to seeing how the whole world is being affected by the events and not just a small segment, which is the case in a lot of young adult dystopian fiction. So I really like that aspect to it. But that's a complete side note. So Scarlet's story, her grandmother has just gone missing, and the police case, to Scarlet's frustration, is not really revealing much about her grandmother's disappearance, and she's getting quite frustrated and irritated because they're kind of just calling it off as sort of a mad woman just disappeared and there's not much they can do about it, where Scarlet's very convinced something more sinister's at work. And then she meets a character called Wolf, who seems like he's going to help her in some way. There's some sort of story building there. So I like that. And then you've kind of got Kai's subplot still continuing from the Cinder story, and now he's dealing with the fact that Cinder's now fugitive and a cyborg, and he's emperor and stuff like that, but he is the subplot, so he's involved less than the other two stories, but still quite an interesting subplot to read about. So you have all these three going on at once, and you're struggling to see how they can all connect and how they don't connect, and at the end it kind of as a eureka moment happens, and they all kind of start connecting a bit more, and you realise that Scarlet and Cinder are actually connected. But I don't want to say any more because I don't want to give away any spoilers, and I think I might have just given away a few. I don't think I have. Nothing major, nothing that was not quite predictable from this book. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. I am going to give it a 7 out of 10. I think it was very enjoyable, as I have stated. I also like Scarlet as a protagonist. I thought she was quite interesting to read about. A different kind of female character that was sort of a strong, well-developed character. She had a level of naivety about her that Cinder doesn't, that makes her quite contrasting. However, the naivety I found was not so much that it made her irritating or frustrating to read about. It was just kind of part of her character you came to accept, and not something that made her seem rather dumb, I think is the best way to put that. I also liked the relationships they had with others. I like the love stories brewing in this. There's quite a few, and I have quite a few ships forming in this world. So that's quite interesting, especially as I feel like they're actually quite well-rounded and developed love stories. The pace of them doesn't throw me off like in some young adult fiction where they seem to be very quickly and uncalled for, and things are rushed that don't necessarily need to be, and I think it gives quite an unrealistic and unhealthy idea of what relationships should be like. I'm saying this, I don't know, I've never been in a relationship, but they seem to be quite unrealistic and unhealthy portrayals. And everything happens really quickly in the space of a couple of days. Well, even though in this one of the love stories one of the relationships starts forming within kind of the span of a day, it didn't feel rushed or unnecessary. It kind of, there was nobody's going for this deep emittal of love yet, and it doesn't feel as complicated. It seems a bit slower, and then the bits that are rushed are more understandably rushed because of the circumstances they're in, instead of them just being rushed for the sake of it to get a love story forming and getting it some sort of pace. So I feel like in this book everything in the plot happened rather realistically. I don't feel like things were thrown in just to make it a sort of fit the sellable template of what a young adult sort of dystopian fantasy fiction novel should be, and everything appeared to be well thought out. At least that's how I felt about the plot. I did have a few problems with it. I'm still not really understanding the issue with cyborgs at all. I don't feel like it's very well explained. There's doesn't, to me, unless it's gone completely over my head, there's no explanation for why they're hated or feared so much. I get the Luna hatred and fear. That makes sense to me. Obviously, if people can control you, your actions and your thoughts and emotions, there is a reason to be quite scared and resentful towards them. But cyborgs, I don't understand, because in my understanding still is that a cyborg is almost like somebody who's got like a prosthetic limb or something, but just a more advanced futuristic version. So their loved ones are at the point of dying, and then they can be saved by becoming part cyborg, and they still have human emotions and feelings. They won't be able to express them in the same way. Like it's mentioned a lot that Cinder can't actually cry, but she can still feel to the point of crying, and she can't actually blush, but she still feels embarrassed. It's not like she doesn't have emotions, she just can't express them as easily as others and things like that. But I don't understand it, because in my head and in my logic, if I knew that one of my loved ones was going to die and the only option for saving them was to give them an artificial limb or organ, I wouldn't fear people that were like that. I would just assume, because it's not like, I even understand if people trying to enhance themselves genetically, but by the sounds of it they're not. It's literally just saving people that have been in horrific accidents. So I don't understand why the fear and the hatred and the prejudice is there. But then again, most fear and hatred from people doesn't necessarily come from logical reasons. So maybe I'm just missing the point of why this is presented, and it's actually just showing that there is no logical reason for this hatred, and I'm missing some deeper meaning. But I don't feel like I am. I could be wrong. Again, if anyone has an opinion that they think just, you know, put it below, and I will have a look and maybe realise what my massive fault in this has been. Yeah, but otherwise I didn't have many problems with it. There was a few things here and there, and it was still, to me, quite young adulty. There's some things I maybe would have preferred, but they're all little picky minor things that I have when I consume any kind of media fiction. I always find faults in things. I'm very particular and picky, as anyone would know. So I'm not going to sit here and list all the little things and little issues I had, because I'd be here for a while, and I just feel like some things, I think some of the things I have with this, some of the things are quite obvious. I think that's as far as I'm not gonna go too far into that, because otherwise I feel like I'm gonna give spoilers and stuff I don't really want to, in case someone else doesn't find it as obvious to me. I understand that they're both based on retellings of really classic fairy tales that everyone knows. Therefore, there are going to be bits that are going to be fairly obvious, because you have to follow the storyline to make it a retelling. However, there were some things in here, to me, that I felt like they were trying to be made into plot twists, and I kind of saw them coming or saw right through them. Anyone that's read the book might know what I mean, others might not, and I feel like that was my problem with it. It was slightly too obvious for my liking. Nothing really surprised me or shocked me, and I do really like a book when it does that, when it sort of outwits me, if that makes sense. I don't know if that does, but does anyone get what I mean? Like, when I'm actually surprised by the mystery or the twist being presented to me, I'm very impressed. But I think I'm finding it harder and harder, because I consume so much fiction now on a daily basis that a lot of templates and plots that are used I now recognise. So maybe that's just the issue, and I'm spoilt with the amount of fiction I consume. That's a possibility. But yes, definitely would give it a 7 out of 10. I'd possibly even give it an 8 out of 10. That's how I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. I'm going to go halfway between, because I feel like a 7 is a little bit under generous, but an 8 is a bit too generous. So 7.5 out of 10. Very good. I like the series for the genre it's in, and I am going to pick up the next one, though I don't know when. I'm not very good with reading series as a whole. I think the only series I've ever actually read as a whole, the whole way through, I think I've only been able to do it with 3 of them. So 3 other series. So it's got to be an exceptional series for me to sit and read the whole thing. So I probably won't read it for a bit. However, I will get round to it, and I've realised I've said so quite a few times in this video, so I do apologise. But I will see you hopefully next week with another review.